A woman sits on the edge of her bed long after midnight, her body still as stone, yet her chest tightens with every shallow breath. Her hands press against her ribs as if holding something broken inside, but no bone has snapped, no visible wound marks her. What aches is older than memory, older even than the words she has for pain. She cannot tell why the same hollow weight returns each time she is alone, nor why her body stiffens when someone reaches for her in tenderness. The silence feels safer than touch, but she wonders, safer from what? Heavy, isn't it? The body remembers what the mind refuses to speak. It carries betrayals like scars beneath the skin, invisible to the eye but sharp to the nervous system. Muscles tighten as if bracing against blows that never come. The stomach knots in anticipation of words never spoken. This is trauma's language, somatic whispers written across shoulders, spine, and breath. You may think you have moved on, yet when a lover turns away too quickly, or when footsteps echo down an empty hall, the heart races as though the past has returned to claim you. Do you recognize this? The sudden trembling, the sweat in your palms, the ache that feels unexplainable. CARL Jung warned that what remains unconscious will return as fate. In the body, that fate is not abstract. It is the migraine that flares when conflict arises, the lower back that burns when you try to stand tall, the chest that locks when you dare to speak truth. Beneath these physical cries lies the shadow, memories and emotions you learned to exile because they once felt too dangerous to hold. As a child, you may have swallowed your rage to keep love close, silenced your sobs to avoid rejection. Those swallowed storms never vanished. They became knots in muscle, echoes in bone, silent vows your body still obeys. Notice how the body bends to protect old wounds. The shoulders hunch as if shielding the heart. The jaw clenches to stop words from breaking free. Even the eyes learn to avert, to dim their brightness, to avoid provoking envy or punishment. Each gesture is an ancient loyalty to the child who once needed armor. Yet the paradox is cruel. What once protected now imprisons. The fortress becomes a cage, and the body aches from carrying what was never meant to be borne forever. Can you feel it? The loyalty of pain to a story you no longer live. Imagine the inner child seated deep inside you, knees pulled close to chest, trembling in a dark corner. She waits, forgotten yet vigilant, guarding against dangers that no longer exist. She is both your shadow and your key. Her silence has carved itself into your nervous system, her fears shaping your breath. And yet behind her trembling she carries an ember, your original self-worth untouched by shame. Jung would call this archetypal, the child wounded but divine, buried but luminous. To approach her, you must first feel the ache without numbing, to listen when the body stutters out its grief. But listening to the body is frightening, isn't it? To pause in stillness is to hear the pounding echoes you've drowned out with busyness, distractions, relationships that mirror your wounds. The silence of the body is not empty, it is thick with everything unspoken. Yet this silence is doorway. The ache is not just suffering, it is signal. Every spasm, every tight throat, every restless night is the body calling you back to where you left yourself behind. The question is, will you enter that door or keep circling the same halls of avoidance? The descent begins here, not in bright affirmations or surface-level healing, but in acknowledging that your body is the archive of every betrayal, every abandonment, every silenced scream. Heavy, isn't it? The ache is not weakness. It is the voice of survival, but survival is not the same as living. And so the story unfolds. The body will keep calling until you answer, or it will break beneath the weight of silence. The choice waits, but how long will you delay before listening? She stands before a mirror in the quiet of morning, her reflection crisp yet foreign. The curve of her shoulders, the shadows beneath her eyes, the subtle tremor in her hand as she adjusts her collar. These small betrayals reveal more truth than she dares admit. The mirror does not lie, but neither does it speak. What stares back is a body carrying lifetimes of unacknowledged story. A body that once learned to shrink so love would not leave. A body that still confuses silence with safety. When you look at your own reflection, what do you see first? The light in your eyes or the weariness beneath them? Jung spoke of the shadow as the part we disown, but shadows do not vanish simply because we refuse to claim them. They cling like damp air in an old house, seeping into every breath, every gesture. In relationships, the unhealed shadow finds expression. The partner who leaves suddenly becomes a father's absence. The criticism of a friend echoes an old teacher's scowl. RN, the slightest rejection unearths the wound of being invisible. You may call these coincidences, but your body knows better. It responds not to logic, but to memory. Do you notice how quickly your chest tightens when someone withdraws affection? Or how heavy your limbs feel when you sense disapproval? The Stoics urged us to examine what is within our control and what lies beyond. But trauma bends this line. The body reacts before reason arrives. The nervous system floods with adrenaline, the muscles brace, and suddenly the present dissolves into fragments of the past. You may tell yourself, I should be stronger, calmer, wiser by now. Yet strength is not the absence of trembling. It is the willingness to feel the tremor without fleeing from it. Healing does not demand that you erase fear. It asks you to stay when fear rises, to anchor yourself in the storm. Consider the archetype of Persephone drawn into the underworld. She descends not by choice, yet her descent transforms her into the queen of both realms, light and shadow. Like her, you may not have chosen your descent into pain. Betrayals, neglect, traumas, these were not of your making. Yet here you are, standing in both worlds. One foot in the ache of the body, the other in the longing for release. The underworld is terrifying, but it is also where seeds root before they rise. Could it be that your body's ache is the soil of transformation? When the chest tightens, notice. When the throat closes, pause. The temptation will be to numb, to scroll, to overwork, to find someone else to fill the gap. But what if you stayed? What if you allowed the trembling hand to tremble, the tears to rise without shame, the breath to come ragged and unsteady? You might discover that the body, though wounded, carries its own medicine. Somatic healing begins not with fixing, but with feeling, letting the body finish what was once interrupted. The sob cut short, the rage swallowed down, the plea for love silenced. All these wait in your bones to be released. There is danger in refusing this call. When the body's cries are ignored, they do not vanish. They become illness, fatigue, restless nights, patterns that trap you in cycles of self-betrayal. To chase worth in the arms of someone who cannot hold you, to work yourself numb just to avoid silence, to keep smiling while your stomach knots with every unspoken truth. This is the cost of refusing to listen. Do you see it in yourself? That place where striving has become punishment, where care for others has become erasure of self. And yet in the same body that aches, there is a blueprint for wholeness. The breath that once grew shallow can deepen. The shoulders that hunched can rise. The hands that trembled can open. Healing is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering the one you buried. She waits beneath the scars, the inner child who still glows. But she will not emerge until you turn toward her, until you risk feeling the grief that has long been locked away. Will you keep fleeing from your own reflection? Or will you face the girl in the mirror who has waited all these years for you to return? The body rarely screams. It whispers first, tightness here, an ache there, a restlessness you cannot name. You dismiss it as stress, fatigue, bad posture. Yet beneath those whispers lies the map to your deepest wounds. Each sensation is a breadcrumb leading back to a moment when your body decided it was safer to hide than to feel. Perhaps it was the night you cried for someone who never came, or the morning you were told to be strong when your world was collapsing. The muscles remember. The breath remembers. And in their remembering, they try to lead you home. To follow this map, you must unlearn the language of dismissal. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" ask, "What is my body trying to say?" When the chest constricts before a difficult conversation, maybe it is guarding the memory of words that once cut too deep. When your stomach flips before intimacy, perhaps it recalls the moment vulnerability was punished, not cherished. This is the essence of somatic healing, to translate the body's ancient tongue and respond with presence instead of avoidance. Can you sit with the ache long enough to hear the story it holds? Archetypally, the wounded body mirrors the archetype of the wounded healer, a figure who is both afflicted and gifted. The wound is not the end of the story, but the portal to deeper understanding. Jung believed that through embracing our suffering, we develop the capacity to guide others. But first, we must guide ourselves. To befriend the body is to acknowledge its wisdom, to treat its pain not as an enemy but as a messenger. Each symptom, each tension, is the shadow's way of knocking on the door you keep locked. It is no coincidence that when you feel unworthy, your body folds inward as if trying to disappear. Or that when rage stirs, your jaw hardens, your fists clench. These are no flaws, they are the nervous system's choreography. For years, your body has been dancing to a song of survival, one composed in childhood, when you believed love was conditional and safety was scarce. But survival is not the same as wholeness. And if you keep dancing to the same old rhythm, you will never know the music of liberation. Do you see how often you rehearse the same steps, even when the stage has changed? To interrupt this dance, you must offer the body something new, safety in the present. Safety is not built through grand gestures but through small, consistent choices, pausing to breathe when anxiety rises, grounding your feet when the past threatens to pull you under, placing a hand over your heart and whispering, "I am safe now." These simple acts begin to rewrite the nervous system's script. They teach the body that it no longer needs to brace for a storm that has already passed. But there will be resistance. Part of you will cling to the old ache because it is familiar, and familiarity masquerades as safety. Shadow loyalty is powerful. It binds you to suffering because suffering once kept you alive. To release it is to step into the unknown, and the unknown terrifies the wounded child within. Yet beyond that fear lies freedom. Imagine standing tall without the weight of old defenses, breathing deeply without flinching from your own feelings. Imagine intimacy without the reflex to hide. Can you feel how foreign and how possible that is? Healing, then, is less about erasing the past and more about expanding your capacity to hold it without being defined by it. The body does not need to forget. It needs to know that the danger is over. Only then can it relax its grip, loosen the knots, open the chest, soften the gaze. Only then can the woman you are now hold the girl you once were and say, "You are safe. You are loved. You are enough." Yet the body will test your sincerity. It will stir old sensations just to see if you flinch, resurrect old fears to ask if you will abandon yourself again. These tests are not setbacks. They are invitations to deepen. Will you answer them with the same old avoidance, or will you stay, breathe, and choose differently this time? There comes a night when the ache sharpens into clarity. Perhaps it is after another argument where you swallowed your words until your throat burned. Perhaps it is after another love affair where you dimmed your light, waiting for someone to notice the quiet suffering you no longer named. In that moment, you realize the ache is not random. It is ritual. The body has been performing the same prayer for years, kneeling at the altar of abandonment, bowing to the god of silence. And suddenly you see it. If nothing changes, the ache will become your inheritance, passed into every choice, every relationship, every breath. Do you want to carry this into another decade of your life? The mirror of relationship is merciless. Each time someone withdraws, your chest locks as if bracing for exile. Each time someone dismisses your truth, your stomach knots as though punishment is coming. Yet here lies the paradox. What you fear most, you unconsciously seek. Jung called this the compulsion of fate. The shadow yearns to be seen, and so it draws you toward partners, friends, even careers that repeat the wound. Not to torture you, but to offer you a chance at redemption. But redemption requires awareness. Have you noticed how often you reenact the same script, hoping this time the ending will change? The inner child waits in those moments, small and trembling, whispering, "Will you choose me now?" Every time you silence yourself to keep another's love, she feels the abandonment all over again. Every time you ignore your body's protest to avoid conflict, she learns that her needs do not matter. Healing begins when you turn toward her, not as a scolding parent, but as the mother she longed for, the one who stays, who listens, who says, "Your voice is sacred." Imagine placing your hand on your own heart and whispering those words. Would she trust you, or has she heard too many promises broken? Somatic work is this reunion. The trembling hands are not weakness, they are signals. The tears you hold back are not shameful, they are rivers longing to flow. The body is not betraying you, it is begging for you. When you tremble, it is the child within surfacing. When you ache, it is her way of knocking. Each sensation is not just pain but invitation. To breathe deeper, to cradle yourself, to give her the safety no one else gave. Will you answer her, or will you abandon her again in pursuit of external validation? The Stoics taught that suffering is not the event but our judgment of it. Yet trauma complicates this truth because judgment was wired into flesh before words were learned. The task now is not to erase but to reinterpret, to feel the same tight chest and declare, "I am safe," to sense the old panic and anchor into the present. This is the alchemy, turn-in. Ache into awareness, turning shadow into strength. Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming whole. But wholeness is not perfection. It is the marriage of wound and wisdom, shadow and light, body and spirit. Consider again Persephone. She returns from the underworld each spring, but she does not return unchanged. She carries the darkness within her, yet it no longer rules her. Like her, you will not erase your descent, but you can carry it differently. Instead of being dragged into the ache unconsciously, you can walk with it consciously. The ache becomes not a curse but a compass, pointing you toward the places that still need love. Can you feel the possibility of holding both the ache and the freedom at once? And here lies the threshold. You can remain loyal to the old wound, rehearsing the same patterns until the body collapses under their weight. Or you can choose to break the vow of silence, to breathe into the ache until it softens, to meet your own reflection with tenderness rather than exile. The body will not stop aching until it is heard. The question is simple, yet terrifying. Are you willing to hear it? In the hush of dawn, when the world has not yet demanded your performance, the ache feels clearest. It hums beneath your ribs like an old song you cannot forget. You lie still, but inside your body is restless, searching for release. This is where many turn away, back into distraction, into busyness, into the familiar grind of ignoring. Yet dawn is also where the portal opens. If you dare to stay with the ache, to breathe into its contours instead of numbing, something begins to shift. The body, long silenced, finally feels your attention, and attention is the first medicine. Your hands tremble not because you are broken, but because the nervous system is thawing. For years it has been frozen, braced against remembered dangers, trapped in survival's rigid grip. When you finally allow it to stir, the thaw feels overwhelming. Tears flood, limbs shake, breath stutters. But this is not breakdown, it is release. The body is emptying the old storm it never got to finish. The trembling is your resurrection. Have you mistaken it for weakness, when it is really your body learning to live again? This is the confrontation with shadow. Jung taught that the shadow holds both what we despise and what we secretly long for. In the body, shadow shows up as shame over your own needs, disgust at your own softness, fear of your own power. Each ache points not just to pain but to disowned strength. The tight throat hides your silenced voice. The heavy chest conceals your buried grief, and within that grief, your deepest love. To reclaim these parts, you must face the discomfort without turning away. Do you see now why the ache lingers? It waits until you are willing to claim what you abandoned. Imagine standing in a darkened room where fragments of yourself are scattered across the floor. Rage lies in one corner, sorrow in another, desire trembling in the shadows. For years you refused to touch them, afraid of what they would mean. But as you bend down one by one and pick them up, something remarkable happens. They do not poison you. They complete you. The rage becomes boundary, the sorrow becomes depth, the desire becomes vitality. This is individuation, the slow, sacred gathering of all that was cast out. The body aches not because it is betraying you, but because it is summoning you back to wholeness. Yet this work demands honesty. To heal is not to float above your story with platitudes, but to feel the heaviness until it teaches you. Somatic truth cannot be bypassed. You cannot think your way out of a clenched jaw or reason away a panic that floods without warning. You must feel your way through. Place a hand on your heart when it races, not to silence it, but to say, "I am here." Rest your palm on your belly when it knots and whisper, "You are safe now." These small acts of presence are revolutions against the legacy of abandonment. The stakes could not be higher. To refuse this work is to live half alive, carrying invisible chains that drag through every relationship, every dream. You may build success, yet never feel worthy of it. You may find love, yet sabotage it with fear of loss. You may appear strong, yet collapse in private with the weight of loneliness. The body will not lie for you. It will keep crying out until you listen, or until it breaks down completely. Do you see how silence, if left unbroken, becomes its own form of self-destruction? And still, within the ache lies a fierce hope. Your body aches because it remembers what wholeness feels like. It aches because it knows you are meant for more than survival. Each knot of tension, each restless night, each tear you fight back, these are not proof of failure, but proof of life. Proof that the child within is still calling for you, refusing to be erased. The ache is her faith that one day you will return. Will you? There is a moment, subtle yet seismic, when the ache stops feeling like an enemy and begins to feel like a guide. Perhaps it happens when you finally allow yourself to sob without restraint, and in the middle of the storm you notice something inside softens. Or perhaps it comes when you place your hand on your chest during panic and realize the rhythm of your heartbeat is steadying under your touch. The body responds not to perfection, but to presence. It does not ask for you to be flawless, only faithful. Can you sense the shift when survival gives way to belonging? The shadow tests you still. Old patterns will rise, temptations to repeat the same loyalties to pain. You may feel the urge to silence yourself in conversation, to chase approval at the expense of your truth, to shrink when your radiance draws eyes. Yet now, something within you hesitates. You recognize the familiar ache, and instead of obeying, you pause. That pause is power. It is the space where fate can be interrupted, where the compulsion to repeat can transform into the choice to create. In that space, the woman you are meets the child you were, and together they decide differently. Somatic healing is not dramatic, it is cellular. It happens in breaths, in moments of staying with the discomfort instead of running. It happens when you soften your jaw after years of clenching, when you stretch your arms wide after decades of folding inward, when you allow a trusted embrace without flinching. Each act rewires the nervous system's faith. Each choice tells your body, the danger has passed. We can live now. Slowly, the fortress of muscle and silence begins to dissolve, and what emerges is not weakness but radiance. Consider again the red thread that has run through your story, the body's ache. At first, it appeared as curse, an unrelenting reminder of pain. Yet as you have followed it deeper, it has become something else, a compass pointing toward every place where love was missing. The ache has never been against you. It has always been for you, insisting that you do not abandon yourself again? What if every knot of tension were a sacred plea, every tear withheld a prayer waiting to be spoken aloud? Would you still see your body as betrayer, or as the most loyal companion you've ever had? The ascent begins when you accept this loyalty. The shoulders that once curled inward begin to open. The breath that once caught begins to flow. The eyes that once dimmed begin to shine with unapologetic light. You do not become someone else. You return to the woman you always were before silence taught you to disappear. She is not naive. She carries scars, but they have become symbols of wisdom, not shackles of shame. The ache has transformed into song, and the song is unmistakable. I have come home to myself. And yet, even here, the body will whisper reminders. Healing is not a final arrival, but a lifelong relationship. There will be days when the old heaviness returns, when grief rises uninvited, when fear whispers that you are unworthy. These are not failures. They are opportunities to practice your new devotion, to turn inward with tenderness, to stay with yourself, to remember the path you have carved. The body will never stop speaking, but now you know how to listen. So ask yourself, when the ache returns tomorrow, will you curse it as burden or bow to it as guide? The choice is yours, and in that choice lies the measure of your freedom. There is a silence after transformation that feels almost unnatural. You are so accustomed to the hum of anxiety, the weight in your chest, the restless scan for danger, that when the body begins to release, the emptiness feels foreign. Do you recognize this? Peace itself can feel unsafe to a nervous system trained in survival. In those moments, you may sabotage the calm, picking fights, overworking, or clinging to old patterns. Not because you want the pain, but because pain is familiar. The challenge of healing is not only to let go of suffering, but to trust the softness that replaces it. Jung spoke of individuation as becoming whole, not pure. Wholeness includes the shadows, the scars, the tremors of your history, but it also includes your joy, your sensuality, your laughter, your creative fire. Feminine self-worth is born when you refuse to exile either half, when you can sit in grief without drowning and in pleasure without shame, when you can embody rage as boundary and tenderness as strength. The body, once silenced, becomes the bridge between these worlds. Every breath is testimony. You are allowed to exist fully. Can you imagine what it feels like to live without apology? The cost of ignoring this calling is heavy. Without healing, the ache calcifies into chronic illness, exhaustion, broken patterns that repeat across generations. Children inherit what parents do not resolve. Lovers inherit what partners will not face. To neglect your body's truths is not a private act. It ripples outward. But so does your healing. When you allow yourself to breathe fully, to claim worth in your own skin, you alter the field around you. Your presence teaches others that wholeness is possible. This is how the wounded healer archetype fulfills its destiny, by transmuting personal pain into collective permission. Now return to the first symbol, the girl curled in the corner of your psyche, trembling in shadow. Once she was the prisoner of your silence. Now as you kneel before her, she lifts her face. You see in her eyes both the terror of what was and the radiance of what will be. When you extend your hand, she takes it. And as she rises, you realize she was never only childlike weakness. She was also your original power, your untouched worth, waiting to return through your embrace. The ache dissolves not because it vanishes, but because it has been answered. This is the true ascent, not perfection, not erasure, but embodiment. You walk through the world carrying both shadow and light, wounds and wisdom, but no longer enslaved by them. The body still speaks, but now you listen. And in listening, you find freedom. The mirror no longer reflects only weariness. It reveals the woman who endured, who descended, who confronted, who returned. She is you, and she is enough. So the final question lingers, clear as dawn. When the ache whispers again, will you exile it as curse or honor it as guide? Your body has already chosen. It has always longed for home. The choice now is yours.